Today, as we continue our series on anabolic steroids, we are going to talk about methendianone or D-bol. This is a very classic and widely used steroid. So let's get into it and learn more about it. So before I start, I just want to mention, I guess I pronounced trenbolone wrong. I pronounced it trenbolone. It is what it is. Life happens. Can't really change it. But I just wanted to mention that. So D-bol. This is a very popular steroid historically. A lot of bodybuilders have used it. Let's zoom in and talk about our boy Ronnie Coleman, one of the best, if not the best bodybuilder ever. And he was known to use D-bol, testosterone, other things. D-bol is a more bulking steroid. It's not cutting like a wind straw, but you can see, I mean, look at this guy. You know, the abs, the legs, that definition in the quads, the shoulders. I mean, he's gigantic. And then over here seems more shredded. I don't think I've ever seen these muscles in my life until now. His lower back is crazy. Everything just looks crazy. And D-bol can offer these big gains. You may not look like Ronnie Coleman, but you know, you'll definitely be big and hopefully get to what you're trying to look like. So D-bol is reasonably priced. It is oral and not injectable, which is great for people who do not like injections. It has been used in the past for things like osteoporosis, skin growth, wasting syndromes. It does have some pretty good potential for mass gain, 10 to 20 pounds in the first few weeks. It's almost always used in a stack, so the potential for weight gain is definitely higher. Now, there is going to be water retention. Again, I think this depends on the person, but there is water retention. And so after that cycle, you're going to lose some of that mass from the water retention. So you might not see the real gains you want. The gains you see before the cycle ends will be a little bit different than after the cycle. And all of this bodybuilding in general depends on diet, genetics, body type. Ronnie Coleman was blessed to have amazing genetics, which really provided a great frame for his body to look the way it did with the steroids. Workout routine and the stacks. There's so many variables, as I've mentioned in my other videos, when it comes to anabolic steroids. Last thing I wanted to mention, the difference between these two molecules is really this little methyl group here. And I've mentioned before, a lot of them are based off testosterone, so I just wanted to show you how close it is to testosterone. So D-bol has a lot of benefits. You can quickly increase the muscle mass. A lot of this is related to the half-life, which we'll talk about. Increase that nitrogen retention, which increases total body protein. I mentioned this in more detail in my last video, so please reference that if you want to get a little bit more details on that. Increase recovery, power, strength, decrease fatigue, which is amazing when it comes to the workouts, and it is very stack friendly. So the half-life is the amount of time it takes for the amount of a substance to decrease by half. Every drug has one, so the longer the half-life, the longer this compound is around, the shorter the half-life, the faster it will metabolize. And so this is a huge factor when it comes to how you take it. So do you want to stagger it? Do you want to take a little bit throughout the day? Do you just want to do it once a day? Like I said, do you want to break it up? Do you want to do it after a workout, right before the gym? So many variables. What are your goals? What's your routine? When you're doing and considering this, half-life is very important. So do you eat? I couldn't find a definite answer to this one. Everyone's different. Some people say don't eat. Some people say eat. I saw different opinions, so it's up to the person. I didn't mention the half-life is 5 hours, so it does leave the body very, very quickly. What's interesting about D-bol is that a characteristic side effect can be hepatotoxicity or liver damage, hepatic liver toxicity damage. Now, this is a part of a family of molecules called the 17-alpha alkylated anabolic steroids. Anavar is one of them, and this is a very good steroid for women, and Anadrol is one of them. Anadrol and Anavar are based off of dihydrotestosterone. This is only about 10% of testosterone in the body, but it's very, very potent. I just wanted to mention that. They're kind of based on different things. So these have a high risk for liver damage, and you'll really won't find them stacked with each other. If any of these steroids are used, you're not going to find the others in the stack. Now, these are some of the many. There's a bunch of them, but I just wanted to mention the ones that are popular, especially Dianabol and Anavar. So I know I mentioned hepatotoxicity, and I wanted to talk about that. At least we're going to discuss a couple proposed mechanisms for this liver damage. In this video, I'm not going to talk about how this steroid works. It's an AAS and they work very similarly. If you want to get the mechanism, you can watch my last two videos on steroids. So let's get into this by defining some terms. Hepatocytes, or liver cells. Necrosis is cell death. Inflammation is interesting. Acute inflammation is what the body uses to deal with things like infections, diseases, tissue injuries, stuff like that. Now, this system is very powerful. It can work against you. So if you have chronic inflammation, it can lead to damage. Overactive inflammation can lead to damage. And cellular respiration is energy. So the first proposed mechanism is hepatocyte hyperplasia, the proliferation, the dramatic increase of liver cells. This can lead to liver tumors. Then you have an infiltration of immune cells into the liver structure. And this does a whole bunch of stuff, but it results in a pro-inflammatory state, which can be damaging. It does a whole bunch of extra stuff, which can lead to liver fibrosis, which can lead to liver cirrhosis, which is over here. Pretty heavy liver damage. This is a healthy liver, smooth, brown, and this is a liver with cirrhosis. Very damaged, very unhealthy, and the liver is the great filter for the body. So if your liver is this damaged, your whole body is going to be dramatically affected. Then we have this mechanism. These steroids can really interrupt that energy production, which can lead to something called oxidative stress, which can damage the cell, allowing for some of these toxic compounds to move in. This can affect the mitochondria. We all know the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And if these mitochondria are damaged, this can lead to a decrease in energy production, energy in general, and hepatocyte necrosis, the death of the liver cells. So these are some proposed mechanisms for the toxicity when it comes to these steroids, in this case, Dianabol, and the 17-alpha alkylated group. So let's talk about the stacks. And I've talked about how stacking is combining more than one anabolic steroid for increased results, and it's used in a cycle, and you take breaks in that cycle for safety. So Dianabol is really cool because it can start a cycle. It has a very short half-life, and it's often used for a short amount of time compared to other steroids. A lot of this is because of the liver toxicity. So it's a booster. It works well as a good booster, especially the first couple weeks of the cycle. It can also be used to push through what's called a plateau. Sometimes when you are in a cycle, you might get to a point where it feels like you hit a wall. There's little to no gains. You're not really getting the strength and the pump you want. And it can be pretty discouraging. And Dianabol can be used to push through that plateau. So it's noteworthy to say that just like any steroid, there's so many ways you can use it. You might want to use it just for a couple weeks to help you push through, or the whole recommended amount of time, which I saw was 4 to 6 weeks. So I'm not going to get too deep into the stacks. We're just going to do a beginner stack, which is here on top, and an intermediate stack, which is here on the bottom. So this first one is a 12-week cycle. Dianabol 25 milligrams every day, week 1 to 6. I mentioned this is a shorter run. It could be 4, it could be just a couple weeks. Testosterone 500 milligrams weekly, week 1 to 10. Then you have Arimidex 0.5 milligrams every other day, week 1 to 12. And I've mentioned before that Arimidex is an aromatase inhibitor. It keeps estrogen from being created from steroids like testosterone. Intermediate stack, you have Dianabol 50 milligrams every day, week 1 to 6. Now we're increasing that Dianabol by 2. You might keep that 6-week run, or you might jump it down to like 4 weeks, 3 weeks, because you're increasing that Dianabol. Everyone's different. You have testosterone, the same amount of testosterone, except it's 12 weeks because it's a 14-week cycle. Then you're adding Deca 400 milligrams weekly, week 1 to 11. Arimidex, same amount, week 1 to 14. I do want to point out that these steroids are stopped before the cycle ends because you want to make sure they're out of your body when you start that post-cycle therapy. Briefly, let's review post-cycle therapy. So as I mentioned, you do this because you really want to decrease the estrogen, increase the testosterone, because your testosterone is going to be depleted. Maintain those gains, reduce those negative side effects. It's pretty much a recovery protocol for your body. So we have clomiphene, which is very popular to help increase testosterone production. We have arimidex, like I just talked about, which keeps estrogen from being produced. You don't want those estrogenic side effects like gynecomastia or man boobs, and this is a great defense against that. And this is used during the cycle. And we can see here that the D-ball, very, very short half-life. So really, you can keep, even if you use it at the end of the cycle, as long as you start that post-cycle therapy within a day of you stopping D-ball, you're good to go. So let's briefly close out with some side effects. I keep mentioning gynecomastia, but I haven't kind of shown you guys what it is, so I want to show you guys what it is. So that estrogen production can lead to a pronounced breast in men. And this can result in things like sensitivity, itching, tingling, pain. It's easy to overlook, especially when you have those big gains in your chest. And here is a far more pronounced example. You can see the differences in the structure. Now, this is actually a plastic surgery results, because for some men, this might not go away or it lasts a long time. Now, I don't think this seems to just be a condition that someone has, but this can result from bodybuilding as well. In here you have testosterone, aromatase. This enzyme converts testosterone into estradiol, which you don't want. And so we use arimidex to keep that pathway from moving forward, keeping that testosterone in your system. Let's close out with some other side effects. We have high blood pressure here, hepatotoxicity, skin disorders, acne, oily skin. We know that the testosterone will crash dramatically, which is why that post-cycle therapy is a must. And that aromatase inhibitor can keep that testosterone circulating. And we have water retention. I mentioned that this really helps with the gains, but you can lose some of it, which can reduce those gains when you finish the cycle. So let's go through the video and review what we learned. So we learned some general facts about D-ball. It's a very popular steroid. Historically, you can really expect some good weight gain when you use it, although there will be water retention, and all this is dependent on diet, genetics, things like that. It's great for an increase in muscle mass quickly, recovery, strength. It does have a short half-life, which really dramatically affects how you use it and the dosing involved. When you take it and how you take it is incredibly important, and there's so many variables involved, and we discussed some of these. Then we talked about this family that D-ball and other steroids are a part of that are noteworthy because they're risk for hepatotoxicity, and you're not going to see these stacked with each other. Then we mentioned some possible mechanisms for the liver damage, liver tumors, things like liver cirrhosis, liver cell death. We got into some specifics, but really just did a general overview on this side effect. We briefly talked about how D-ball is great for starting a cycle or pushing through a plateau, and it's always used for a short period of time. We then discussed some stacks, D-ball, testosterone, arimidex, D-ball, testosterone, deca, and arimidex, all sorts of different variables and options. Just wanted to show you guys some examples. We briefly discussed post-cycle therapy. We all know it's a must when it comes to steroid cycles, clomiphene, arimidex, all sorts of different molecules. We're trying to reduce those side effects, increase that testosterone, reduce that estrogen, and help our body recover from the cycle. We then talked about side effects like gynecomastia, which can result in man boobs, which you don't want. So you take arimidex to cut off that pathway to keep testosterone and these other hormones circulating. Then lastly, we talked about high blood pressure, skin disorders, water retention, testosterone crash, hepatotoxicity, just as a general overview of the side effects. So that's all I got. I appreciate you guys watching and listening. I know it took a little break, but I'm back with some more content. I'm excited to keep this series going and put out more content with all sorts of different topics. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell your friends, and I'll be back soon with another video.